Hello, welcome to Sunlight on Suffield. I'm Neil Hornish. Submitted for your approval, the 2025 Suffield First Selectman Debate. Before we get started with the debate, I would like to address some concerns that occurred with the coordination of this debate and some questions. The first question is, why is Sunlight on Suffield hosting a debate? Well, that one's easy, because nobody else is doing it. It's been at least 14 years since there's been a first selectman debate in Suffield, and we figured no one else is doing it, we might as well do it. So in August, we submitted emails to the 3 candidates for first selectman and invited them to join the debate. Those emails were followed up by subsequent emails and personal texts explaining the process and the rules of the debate. Now, we limited the debate invitation to the first selectman seats for a couple of reasons. The first one is the rest of the Board of Selectmen, they're uncontested seats. They've already won their seats. And also to expand this to other boards and commissions was just beyond our capabilities at this time. And it wasn't long until we started receiving some criticisms for us having a debate, and I'd like to address some of those. First, some people said that Sunlight on Suffield could not hold an impartial debate, that we were too biased. Now, Sunlight on Suffield has never claimed to be unbiased. The people currently working on the program are all pretty progressive and we're left-leaning. A couple of us, not the majority, are members of the Democratic Town Committee. So it's understandable that some Republicans may think that we are biased. But it wasn't the Republicans. It was members of the Democratic Town Committee that started the criticisms in the first place. Now, granted, the Republicans have not weighed in either way. They've been silent on this debate. But the members of the DTC, the Democratic Town Committee, stated that we were biased because some members of Sunlight on Suffield worked to be nominated for the Board of Selectmen and the first selectman seats on the floor of the Democratic caucus that was held in July. Now, that's true. It's also perfectly acceptable and ethical and within party rules to do that. Now, those people were not nominated, and that's a story that will be discussed in another episode, but that doesn't mean we cannot be impartial. We know it's important to have a debate that is impartial, so we took steps towards that. First, we found an impartial moderator. The League of Women Voters agreed to moderate our debate, and the League of Women Voters have extensive experience in hosting debates. This was a person who was not from Suffield and who did not know any of the candidates. Next, the members of Sunlight on Suffield did not create any of the questions for the debate. Instead, we reached out to social media, the Sunlight Facebook page, Suffield Neighbors, Suffield Forum, and asked the citizens of Suffield to submit questions to a Google Doc. We also asked the superintendent of schools to reach out to the students in the high school civics class to see if they had any questions. And through this process, we received a number of questions from the citizens. In addition, according to the rules for moderating from the League of Women Voters, it was decided that the moderator would decide which questions to ask and that none of the candidates would receive the questions in advance. All that was left for the Sunlight on Suffield crew to do was to videotape the debate. We took ourselves out of the equation for the questions and the moderating and how the debate would be handled. But there were other criticisms. One was that this taping is occurring on the last night of Yom Kippur. Well, originally this would have happened in September, but there was a problem with the studio, and this was the only date that was available. We did agree that we could start the taping later in the evening after Yom Kippur ended, 1 hour after sundown. And furthermore, this show is being taped on October 2nd. Absentee ballots are available starting on October 3rd. So we felt it was important to get this out as quickly as possible for those people requesting absentee ballots. There was a question on why we were not having this debate in front of a live audience. Well, we felt the studio was a better choice because the quality of production is better, and this video has the potential to reach more people than the number of people who might attend an in-person debate. Unfortunately, the Cox studio is not large enough to handle an audience, but we did offer that the candidates could bring 1 or 2 guests, and if one of those guests wanted to live stream the debate on Facebook, they were more than welcome to do that. And also, having a debate without a live audience is nothing unusual anymore. If you recall, during the pandemic, there was a presidential debate that did not have a live audience. So all of this information was provided to the candidates. And we were open and straightforward on how we were handling this debate. So if a representative from the League of Women Voters was to moderate this debate, then what am I doing here? Well, I will answer that question right after I introduce the candidates. First, I would like to introduce the unaffiliated candidate, Mr. Rick Sotil.
Hello, I'm Rick Sotil.
Okay, next, I would like to introduce the Republican incumbent, Colin Mole, but he is not here right now. He did not even bother to respond to our request for a debate. I would also like to introduce the Democrat candidate, Jim Irwin, but he declined to attend our debate, stating in an open letter on social media that Sunlight on Southfield was just too biased to have a debate, even though all the steps that I just explained had been explained to him. We will leave it to you, the viewer, to decide if we took the appropriate steps to make this an impartial debate. So, since only one candidate showed up, the moderator from the League of Women Voters decided that they could not moderate a debate. There was no debate if there's only one candidate. And we agreed to that. It doesn't make sense to have a person drive halfway across the state to come and interview one candidate. But even though the League of Women Voters backed out because 2 of the candidates refused to debate, that did not stop the chairman of the Democratic Town Committee from still reaching out to the League of Women Voters to complain about this whole debate. So we needed to decide what to do. Should we not do anything and therefore penalize Mr. Sotil, the one person who stepped up and agreed to do a debate? Should we not have a show and let the people who submitted questions not be able to get their questions addressed? We decided that something is better than nothing. And since Mr. Irwin and Mr. Mull are avoiding the debate, we will ask the questions to candidate Rick Sotil. So at least the people who submitted questions can have at least one candidate address their concerns. And if any of the other candidates happen to walk in during the taping of this debate, we'd be happy to sit them down and give them the opportunity to speak as well. So with that, I would like to hand this over to Sandra Janik and Melissa Silva. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Hello, Rick. Thanks for being with us this evening. Let's just jump in, shall we?
Yes.
Okay. We have quite a few newer community members in town. Why should they vote for you?
Well, because I don't feel like the town is getting a complete picture of anything that happens in town. The current administration will give you bits and pieces of whatever information with the help of the Democrats. So they swayed your vote one way or the other instead of getting the complete picture. Now, I was the head of a union for 20 years. We gave the members the complete picture from top to bottom of the contract, what they were going to be voting on. I don't feel like this is what's happening in town.
Will you purchase a home in Suffield if you become first selectman?
I've been living in town for over 2 years, and actually I purchased another home, so I have 2 homes in Suffield. And I've been living here for quite some time, and I moved in specifically to run for first selectman. And when people can't control you, like the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, they tend to try to control the people around you. And they did a good job last year by claiming that I wasn't living in town, which I was living in town. So anybody that's really interested, come on over and I'll show you where I live.
And the next question we got was, do you believe the first selectman must live in town to be full-time to be best serve the community?
Of course, 100%.
Okay.
Okay, my turn. We're going to go into town services and local priorities. How will you support the library in town?
Well, first of all, I don't know what kind of powers I would have as first selectman, but if I were the first selectman, if I had the power, anybody and everybody that has voted to censor any book would be fired on the first day. That's right off the bat. And you let the librarians run the show. There was a gentleman in Austin Roberts, I think it was. He ran a good show. I thought he was a good gentleman. He was a straight shooter and gave everybody a complete picture of what was happening. I would call him and I would ask him if he can help me in making sure that the integrity of the librarians in the library stay there and nobody infringes on our First Amendment rights.
Okay. There have been controversies around what the library is allowed to display. Do you believe displays should be regulated by town officials or left to the library director's discretion?
The library people are the ones that are the professionals that have been trained and have the education to do so. We leave it to their integrity to do so.
Connecticut recently passed a law requiring libraries to submit updated collection and display policies. Do you believe Suffield should comply?
Absolutely.
Many residents feel Suffield has been controlled by farmers, while other taxpayers see higher valuations and less return. What will you do as first selectman to ensure fairness for all residents, improve the schools, and provide fields and activities for children?
Well, first of all, we have to talk about how we spend our money. I consider the way the Republicans are running this town as a bunch of financial bleeding heart liberals. Yet, they want to be a bunch of conservatives to tell us what we can read, what we can't read, and how we can live our lives. So what I would do is to bring in responsibility. And plain and simple, common sense. If, in fact, it were my money, how would I spend it? And I wouldn't spend it any different than I would the town's money. The town doesn't do that. The town spends its money on frivolous lawsuits that they're losing. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and yet we have the children in town paying the price. Last year, they cut the budget by $250,000. So I think this is wrong. I mean, if in fact you have to cut it for whatever issues, the finances, or maybe there's not that many kids in school anymore, so be it. You talk about these things. But the mere fact that you have to cut it because of financial issues, and you're promoting all these lawsuits that could have been resolved in 5 minutes. And, you know, if we would bring in clean and green industry into the town and generate that base and to help lower the property taxes, because I feel bad that some of the seniors in town are going to be kicked out of their homes because they're on a fixed income, and yet the taxes, everything keeps going up. What's going to happen when they reach that threshold? They won't be able to live in town. And there is maneuvers and there is things that we can do into this town, but these people making these decisions in town, from being in their 80s and religious fanatics in town, is precluding this town from growing. And I would like to promote all that stuff. Right now, currently, I had a lawsuit with the town, in which I won, which is going to bring millions of dollars to this town. They're spending your money on kicking this industry out, which I would want to come in. Not only that, but other industries too. I'm not talking about McDonald's and all these franchises. I'm talking about green energy and clean energy. And there's a good demand for it here in town because we're right next to the highway. Mm-hmm. We're close to Hartford, close to Springfield. So we're an ideal town to make this town grow. And by doing that, hopefully you'd have enough revenues to bring those property taxes down, or at least try to.
Okay. Now we're going to jump into community inclusion and values. This debate was scheduled on Yom Kippur, the most important Jewish holiday. How would you ensure future town events respect all religions, religious observations?
Well, by including everybody and everything, that discriminated against anybody. Now, I'm a perfect example of what happened. 14 years ago, when I was in my town, in my buildings there, which I bought 25 years ago, the town decided, after that snowstorm 14 years ago, I put a big sign out in the front. Free firewood, keep the family warm. Everybody came, I didn't care who it was, and I gave all my firewood away to keep family warm because there was no electricity. So I said, let me do my part. Well, soon thereafter, the town came after me, a guy named James Taylor. He closed me down. He said I was running an illegal contractor's yard. And then after that, once we got that cleared, I had the McEnany, which was the Republican first selectman in town, that we have to go into your building, and the only way they can come into my building is with a guy named Mike Thibodeau, which was at that time the fire marshal. So they came into my buildings and they gave me countless citations with the building inspector, Ted Flanders. But what happened thereafter, I was trying to comply with everything they had, and they kept moving the field goal. But what threw me over the top was when a guy named Keith Morris from Inland Wetlands sent a letter to the gentleman in the back in his 90, Mr. Graziani, which is a dear friend of mine, that I put wood chips in the wetlands. That's it. Before all this, I used to be a labor leader. I learned all the ins and outs. We were in a fight with the highlight owners, and that we were never going to win. Well, we endured, we won, vini, vini, vici. So I knew everything. And the town of Suffield were a bunch of amateurs to me. So I went after them. I called the state fire marshal, and he overruled Mr. Mike Thibodeau on the violations, because that's what happens here. If you're not wanted, you're not one of them, and this is where we were talking about people before. We all should be feeling welcome, whether your religion, what color you are, what language you speak. That didn't happen to me. So I fought back, and I won. And I don't feel like the fire marshal should be used as a tool against one of his citizens. And I will never do that. And this is what's been happening for a long time. And I just won't allow it anymore because it's time now. They're doing the same thing right now. You know, my wife asked me the other day, why are you doing this? And he said, you know, maybe you have to let go of the past. Well, the past tells us a set for the future. And apparently 14 years ago, they did it to me, and it was very uncomfortable. But I had the tenacity, the knowledge, and the final resources to be able to fight the town off, and I did. But now they're doing it to a woman on 1500 Hill Street. Yeah, she's an American, but she speaks with an accent, and she's a farmer. Now they're utilizing the ordinance on odor. That ordinance on odor passed to try to keep me out of the town of Suffield. That if you could smell marijuana from the property line, you would have to shut the business down. First of all, it's illegal, but they used it. Now, somebody on Facebook put in there, let me know what specific ordinance that was, and I tried looking it up online, and I couldn't find it. But what I did find is my text messages back with Colin Moe back in January 24th, 2022 at 9:12. And he responds to me, the smell ordinance isn't the only item that you need to look at for that. So, with that being said, again, this town hides information from its residents to sway you from voting one way or the other. Now, I hit also freedom of information to get the documentation that I had about the state fire marshal overruling the local fire marshal. And the town attorney sent me a letter with all the information that I had, except for that one piece. Oh, we don't have that. If you have that, you have to go directly to the state fire marshal. Well, here's the copy that the town received it. They have it right here. And they don't give you the information that you need to make the proper decisions. And that is going to come to an end. If I am the first selectman, the town will know everything from top to bottom. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. What you see is what you get. I'm not going to treat you like babies. We're all adults. And do what you need to do.
If elected, will you work to overturn Suffield's current flag policy, which was passed unanimously by the Board of Selectmen?
Of course I will. I think everybody should be welcome. If there's no state law precluding that, then we'll be welcome whatever companies, whatever organizations would like to come and demonstrate, and we will be more of a welcoming town to everybody, and we will never be doing to certain residents like they did to me and this young family now on Hill Street. It's just not going to happen with me.
What assurances can you give that you will stand with marginalized citizens in our community? What have you done or what will you do to make them feel more welcome?
Well, I'll make sure, I'll remind them that I was one of those people, and I would not want them to be treated as I was treated. Because not everybody has the knowledge, the strength, and the finances to fight back. Now, if in fact I have a building inspector and a fire marshal that need to do their job, be nice and explain to them what they need to do. Not because when they came into my building, they came to my building finding what they can hit me with. Not come in, oh, Rick, you really have to do this, or you should move this. No, no, no. And that's going to end. We have to be more kind and thoughtful with everybody else in town. So yes, being one of those marginalized people, I won't stand for it.
Okay. What three concrete steps will you take to address generational racism and bias in Suffield?
Well, I just explained it. You know, being a Hispanic in town, I do speak 4 languages, and sometimes my accent does come out, especially when I get a little upset. So just won't allow it to happen. If in fact the leadership allows it to happen, then it's going to trickle down to everybody else. If you make it very clear that you're not going to tolerate that, well, it won't be tolerated. Not from the police, not from the fire marshal, and not from the zoning enforcer nor the building inspector. You want to comply with the rules, explain them to me, because sometimes people just don't know that they're in violation of something. So you explain it to them, and if they change a few things, then you're okay with everybody else.
Okay. What 3 concrete steps will you take to address anti-LGBTQIA+ segment in community and help make Suffield more welcoming and diverse?
Well, you know, I was involved with the whole library issue about that book, and it had to do with pronouns, and it seemed like nobody had a problem with it. And because they said instead of lock her up, it switched to lock him up. Now they had a problem with it. So I read it on a Tuesday. And I read it once, and I couldn't understand it. But I read it twice, and I still can't understand it. But I do know now on Tuesdays, I'm a little gay. So, you know, who knows what happened? It just won't happen. You know, it's just, everybody's people in town. I am a financial conservative, and I'm a social liberal. Live however you want to live your life. Stay the hell out of mine. Pay your taxes like everybody else. Be nice. Be kind. And we'll all get along.
So, big picture, closing statements. In spite of a few new affordable housing units currently going up in Suffield, it's still below the state mandated 10%. What is your vision for increasing affordable and modestly priced housing for both young families and older residents who want to downsize but remain in town?
Well, the mere fact that planning and zoning, again, is, when I was there, people in their 80s and religious fanatics saying no to everything. And we have this problem in town where somebody bought a church and wanted to build 12 or 13 luxurious homes. Planning and zoning said no. Then he said, okay, well, now I'm going to go for affordable housing. And he's going to win. Because my attorneys that won in town, that my lawsuit, also do that issue, because this town is going to lose. That guy is going to win. So with that being said, we have plenty of properties throughout the whole town to disperse it all, not in the center of the green. You know, especially with these $1 million homes or what have you, that's the last thing they want. But if we have 15 apartments here, 5 apartments there, 3 apartments here, we can reach that mandate. It's just all common sense, and nobody's dealing with common sense. That's what I bring to the table. I am not a controlled candidate. I don't listen to, I have absolutely no respect for the head of the Democratic Party, none whatsoever. And I don't listen to anybody except for common sense and the residents. And if it's the right thing to do, then you do it. If we have a mandate, then we do it. We get together with the community. What is the best way of doing it? And if we have a whole bunch of properties, then let's see what we can do to comport with that mandate that we have.
How do you think the current state of national politics could positively or negatively impact Suffield residents?
Well, it's happening now. It's all about lies. Nobody's talking about facts anymore. You know, it's all about lies. Now, for example, here, this voter guide, you have Colin, he says that we returned $1 million back to the taxpayers. And you got a $10 million here. That's $11 million. That's 15% of our budget. Why aren't our property taxes going down with a $16 million surplus? So it's all horseshit. You know, I apologize for saying it, but I am human. I'm a tree guy. So this is what we do. We really need to go to the facts and stop with, what is it called, gaslighting? That. And just say the truth. Here's what we have. If we have financial problems and we're going to need to cut back, me, as the first selectman, I would cut my salary first before I even ask anybody else to do it. So those are what you need to do. But there's a lot of things that we can do to stop it. Now, they're not telling you how much money they spent on all these lawsuits. My industry alone would have brought millions of dollars into the town of Suffield. My industry alone. And not one person opposed it in planning and zoning. Not one person opposed it at the Board of Appeals. And they forced me to take it to court, in which we won. Those are what I want to bring in, and that you're using your money to kick it out. It would have brought jobs in for kids that didn't know where they want to go in life, with good union jobs, because I was the first one in the state legislature that signed with the unions. United Food and Commercial Workers. Here you go. You want to come, instead of making $10, I'll make 8. Fine, so be it. So that's what we have to do. By tell the truth about what's going on. And the mere fact that Jim Irwin and Colin Mull are not here, I call them the Rep Dems. It's one political party in town. They decide, I call it voter manipulation. They decide who goes in, who doesn't go in, and somebody like me is going to be chastised. So fine, so be it. You know, I stand alone, and I have no problem. I speak directly to the people, and the unaffiliated and the independents outnumber the Republicans and the Democrats. It seems like these two parties feel like they control it all, and it's not true. So if you're hearing this, because those people that signed my petition, I didn't ask if they were Republicans, Democrats. I just went out and did it. And that's what's happening in town. We don't have a strong Democratic Party in town. We have one party.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Rick. Sorry this couldn't be more of a debate.
It's okay. That's the way it goes.
Thank you all for watching. This is Sunlight on Suffield.
Okay.